Good morning. I stay here. I go to that's right. I go to Middletown, go hall, and come back.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Isabel Marsh. I am the Business Outreach Specialist at the Greater Newport Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to our third year of the Blue and You series. I'm just going to read my notes here. These are taking place every Thursday morning during the summer at Innovate Newport. They are free and open to the public, and they will be held from 8:30 to 10 a.m. The core of this program is inclusion and accessibility to information and opportunities in the burgeoning blue economy in Rhode Island. Sponsorship is very important. That's how we can offer this at no charge to the public. I'd like to recognize and thank our generous sponsors. The first is Regent. They build Sea Gliders. Sea Gliders are the first form of zero-emission, high-speed coastal transportation. Anduril Industries, they're a defense technology company with a mission to transform U.S. and allied military capabilities with advanced technology. This is all in Newport, the Newport area, right? Newport Craft Brewing and Distilling Company, they have been brewing craft beer since 1999, and they have been distilling spirits since 2006. So our topic today is pathways to opportunity. For the blue economy to grow, it must include engagement from a variety of stakeholders, including the public and private sector, nonprofit organizations, and underrepresented groups. A thriving blue economy needs to benefit both the people and the environment. So I'm very pleased to introduce our lead panelist and moderator, Linda Larson, who is Programs and Partnership Manager at 401 TechBridge. It's Linda. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Linda, and then we're going to hand off. So Linda is charged with facilitating collaboration across industry, government, and academia by leveraging resources and expertise of the region's vibrant defense, advanced materials, and technology ecosystem. You're busy. So she serves startups, entrepreneurs, established companies, and educational institutions. And she does this by assisting with bridging research and development gaps, the development of a talent pipeline, and connecting customers and funding opportunities to drive economic growth in our region. So I'm very pleased to introduce Linda. There you go.
All right. All right, the mic taking up. You're going to have the mic, and I'm going to bring the chair back.
Awesome, we can do this. Good morning, everyone. So I have the honor and privilege of welcoming our esteemed panelists and all around incredible people. So first, Jen Huber is the VP of Operations at the Rhode Island Marine Trades Association. With 12 years of experience with the Rhode Island Marine Trades Association, Jen has been heavily focused on creating workforce development programming for the recreational boating industry. Jen has extensive experience in both youth and adult programming, grant management, and partnership building. Prior to joining WIMTA, Jen worked for organizations serving at-risk youth and adult populations. Our next esteemed panelist is Lindsay Bickle. She's the Director of Workforce and Community Partnerships at the URI Research Foundation and Polaris MEP, so the Manufacturing Extension Partnership. Lindsay works with state, nonprofit, and private industry to create opportunities for economic growth through a lens of equity and accessibility, develops employer-driven workforce programs to create jobs, retain talent, and train workers for tomorrow's challenges while creating high-growth career pathways for individuals with systemic barriers to training and employment. So if you'd welcome our panelists. Some of us have notes. So we are certainly happy to see you all and grateful for your time and kind of coming out here this morning. Thank Innovate Newport and the team here for the great work that they do and the space that they offer. But also the Bloom Year Series is in its second year, third year? Third year. Oh, see what happens when pandemic kind of thing, messes with your brain. So third year, and it's a great opportunity for folks working in the space to come out and really kind of talk to you all, answer questions and kind of share the work that's happening. But also, once we leave here, right, how do we continue to foster relationships and continue the conversation and engagement? And that's what Innovate Newport and the Bloom Series allows, and that's kind of why it draws folks like us here to do this work, because we certainly can't do it alone. We are not going to do death by PowerPoint. There is no slides, there is no presentation. Kevin asked me this morning, and I'm like, yeah, no, we don't have anything. This is more hopefully conversational, and it's a dialogue, and we're going to share, but we also want to hear from you, right? Why did you come out this morning? What were you looking for? What else, what questions do you have? How can we assist? Or how can we put you in touch with somebody, right, that may be able to help you and answer your questions and potentially partner. So with that being said, we did introductions, and I know that we write these paragraphs, but knowing Lindsay and Jen for the amount of time that I've known them, they're well beyond their experience in the work that they're doing beyond just the paragraph that's written. So I am going to pass the microphone over and ask them just to kind of give a little background about themselves and not only their job description, but maybe some of the other things that you've done.
Sure. Hi, everyone. How's it going? I'm Lindsay Brickell. My pronouns are she, her. I have been working with Polaris MEP and the ULI Research Foundation for about 5 or 6 years now, and I have focused on creating access for high-growth career pathways for folks that have systematic barriers. Before that, I worked in sustainable international development, a little bit of work with refugee displacement and post-Sandy recovery. So I've been all over the place. I've lived in a few countries, born in Providence, came back after a lot of hiatus, and I've been raising my 3 kids here for a few years. 8 years. Time flies. And yeah, I love Newport, love being here, really happy to be here. I have the honor of working with these two very frequently, and it's been such a pleasure to align our work and really the focus on partnerships. I think it was in all of the bios, right? We're creating partnerships, and that is what I like to highlight in the work we're doing. Polaris, URF, 401 Tech Bridge, RIMTA, we find ways to fill gaps and try not to duplicate services, but by really looking at the competitive advantages that all of us have in the industry and the experience we have. So it's a real honor to work with these two folks.
Thanks, Lindsay. My name is Jen Huber, as Linda said. I've been with the Rhode Island Marine Trades Association for just about 12 years now. The interesting thing about me and my career with RIMTA is that I am not into boating. I did not grow up boating. I don't want to be, well, I can't say that I don't want to be on a boat, but my interest isn't necessarily in boating, it's in workforce development. So grew up in North Kingstown, had no idea about the careers and jobs in the marine industry right in my backyard. No idea. Kids in Newport don't know. Kids in Wakefield don't know. It's an ongoing process for the Rhode Island Marine Trades Association to promote the industry in Rhode Island, to parents, to adults, to young people, career changers. I actually have a degree in criminal justice from Rhode Island College, then went the human services route, working with at-risk youth, homeless families, and then got into workforce development, where the previous director of RIMTA reached out to me and said, hey, why don't you come join the industry? I said, well, I can kind of look the part. I can look like a sailor or a boater. And so I pulled it off and went through the interview and got the job, and have been with RIMTA for quite a while now, and I absolutely love it. The workforce development part is huge, and the partnership piece is huge too. So.
So, as you can see, right, it's tough to keep up with the two ladies here to the left of me, but certainly, so prior to coming to 401 Tech Bridge and the piece that you heard, I was with the Defense Industry Association for 8 years, working on economic development and workforce development with our defense contractors in the defense space. Prior to that, many years ago, worked corporate in that cog of a wheel that many are in, and quickly realized after many years, I guess that's not quick, that probably wasn't the path for me, and kind of came home and talked my husband into letting me get I shouldn't say letting me, but it was letting me get another degree in education and spend some time in the education space here in Rhode Island, which then turned into career pathways development and career and technical education, and then I kind of made my way to the Defense Industry Association, but I chaired the Rhode Island Career and Technical Education Board of Trustees for 8 years, and did a lot of work in a lot of school systems, as well as developing workforce for the defense industry. So, and now I'm at 401 Tech Bridge doing some different things that we'll discuss shortly. So very diverse backgrounds, but very much focused on creating pathways and opportunities and awareness and exposure for businesses as well as adults, as well as youth in this space. A little overview of your organization. So Lindsay, when you say URI Research Foundation and the Polaris MEP, kind of, if you could bundle that up a little bit and kind of talk about who they are and what they do.
So Polaris MEP is a manufacturing extension partnership. There's one MEP in every state and one in Puerto Rico. So 51, we're part of a national network, but we're all independent. And each MEP looks a little different, but it's responsive to the manufacturing industry in their state or in their location. So we do whatever we need to support, well, not whatever we need, we do what's right to support the manufacturing industry. The work, and Polaris MEP is one business unit out of 3 of the URI Research Foundation, which is not part of URI and does not do their own research, so it's poorly named, but still that organization. And so 401 Tech Bridge is another business and sister unit of Polaris MEP. The workforce sector at Polaris MEP has focused on, as I said before, creating pipelines for high-growth career pathways for folks that have barriers. So the whole idea is to create programs that create access for those with the most barriers, and then we can work up from there. So like that, everything, the wraparound services, create pathways into these high-growth career pathways that will continue to move them from folks from poverty to stability to wealth generation. So that's how we structure our programs, and I think we'll talk more about them later, but and also what Blue Tech is. But I thought it was funny because we were talking about the sponsors, and I swear I'm not being paid to highlight the sponsors again, but Regen, so you know, the glider, the Sea Glider, and these are all companies that Polaris MEP would support, whether that's for ISO certification, lean training, facility layout, workforce, you know, to do that, you know, because there's boat building or craft building, there's the defense industry, and there's also craft brewing, which, you know, if you are on a boat, a lot of people drink on boats, so it's very relevant to the marine industry. Safely, though, safely drinking on boats and responsibly.
We're good at that. So the Rhode Island Marine Trades Association is very similar to Polaris MEP. We have a better nickname, or a better acronym, and it's easier to explain kind of what we are and who we are. So when you think of Rhode Island Marine Trades Association, we are like a chamber of commerce, but for the boating industry, recreational boating industry. And the recreational boating industry is the pleasure side of the industry. It's not, although we do partner with Electric Boat, we're not Electric Boat, we're not commercial fishing, we're the boatyards and marinas that you see all along the coast. We've got about 230, 250 members or so throughout Rhode Island, some on the border of Massachusetts and Connecticut, but those are all connected to recreational boating. Boat builders, canvas makers, insurance providers, lawyers connected to the industry. In Rhode Island, there's about 1,700 companies in the industry, which make up about just over 13,000 jobs. So there's a lot of jobs in the industry in Rhode Island in recreational boating, which is a misconception for most people, and these are full-time, year-round jobs. There's kind of three pillars that we focus on for RIMTA. One is advocacy. Part of membership dues for the companies that are participating with RIMTA, that goes towards a lobbyist to make sure that laws and legislature and things like that are all in favor of the industry. So the advocacy piece. Promotion, which I had talked a little bit about earlier, promoting the industry as a powerful industry in Rhode Island, and then workforce, which we'll talk a little bit about more later.
Great, so just a little bit about 401 Tech Bridge, and again, naming means everything, so 401 doesn't mean we're just in Rhode Island, so don't let that confuse you. We do sit in and under as a business unit of the Rhode Island URI Research Foundation, but as Lindsay pointed out, it's separate from the university, and it's its own standalone 501c3. We are focused on really developing that R&D piece, focused on dual-use technologies and providing whatever assistance, programming, funding, research and development with regards to creating technology into commercialization. That dual-use focus of the technology is really identifying something that can be present in another industry, but potentially could have a military application. So, this item right here might be in, the healthcare industry, but also have properties, technology, materials, sensing, capabilities that could have a defense application. We do work heavily on the defense side in the blue tech space, but on the defense side, in our partnership as a tech bridge with the Naval Undersea Warfare Center. So sourcing problems, doing programming, demonstrations, those kinds of things, which we'll talk about, but really having that dual use, right, and spinning technology in and out of that sector, but technology in and out of the defense sector, but also really focusing on every other industry to try to find those businesses, entrepreneurs, startups in technology that we may be able to spin in to solve problems. So I promised Jen that I wouldn't ask this question of her first. Can you define, in your own words, what the blue economy is?
Any work that happens in Rhode Island. So we're talking, we work primarily with manufacturers, but blue tech can involve aquaculture, it can talk about manufacturing, marine trades, undersea mapping, it can involve, did I say oyster farming already? Oyster farming? There's a lot of oyster farms around here. They're delicious. So anything that can be tied to wind or wind generation, smart harbors, and defense. So it's really anything that can be in or near the coastline that can be tied to technology and development. So in Rhode Island, we've got a lot of it. And that you find yourself linked to the blue economy in ways you didn't know. So we have folks that are coming through our training program that are, might be going to work in an electric boat. They might be going to work at, one of our marine trades partners that are doing composites or machining. There's a lot of different ways to be tied into the blue economy through the supply chain in manufacturing, marine trades, and defense technologies. And a lot of people don't always include the aquaculture and food production in there, but it's definitely in there.
Oh, I do have to answer. Ditto what Lindsay said. So coming from the workforce side, I think about blue economy and more of a transferable skills connection, with manufacturing and marine trades and aquaculture, all of the things that Lindsay had mentioned connected to the water. There's so many skills that people wouldn't necessarily think about that are transferable that could get you into the marine trades, into manufacturing, into fishing, aquaculture. So just kind of keeping that awareness that it's all pathways are all kind of connected in the blue economy.
So the reason for me asking that question, and probably, Lindsay was incredibly eloquent, and when I mentioned it to Jen, she said, "Don't ask me that, please, I can't." Well, the reason for me asking that question is, can you imagine, as we're sitting here talking to you, or outside these walls, right, indoors, how do not only Rhode Islanders, but anyone kind of sitting out there in the workforce in our state or beyond, see themselves as part of the blue economy? And when we hear blue economy, right, what does that actually mean? Is it just boating and water? You heard about a number of different things, and there's more. But there's also their supply chains, right, that support the boating industry, or the defense industry, or the wind industry, or shipping, ports, aquaculture, oysters. It goes far beyond just those kind of segmented categories within the sector. And when we start, kind of tagging blue economy, right, everybody hears that, and then we come out and say blue technology, blue tech, right? So that segments that blue economy piece down even further. So communities and folks and youth and adults don't see them in a blue tech space. But, oysters, there's a lot of technology that goes into cultivating oysters. There's a ton of technology that goes into supporting the boating industry, whether it be recreational or commercial, from the composites piece of it and systems and, GPS, and, she's not a boater and I'm less of a boater. So how do we use language, words, even in our messaging, even in our promotion of our programs, or our businesses, our organizations, that speak to the communities, the people, the youth, the adults that are out there just not knowing where to turn, not seeing themselves, but more importantly, not thinking that they have the ability or skill sets or the wherewithal to even approach someone like a Lindsay or a Jen for one of their programs. So the more that we can start talking about and kind of getting, blue economy, blue tech, and really kind of getting into the nuts and bolts of what that means or what that could mean for people, that's what we rely on, sessions like this at the Blue and You, and what Innovate Newport does here, but also when you leave here today and talk about this space to your networks, that you're talking about it in a more broader sense, that they can see themselves, or there are organizations that are doing this work. I'm going to turn it back over to Jen. So, Jen, part of the Rhode Island Marine Trades Association, obviously we're an industry association, and you kind of went through, some of the different pieces. What is the importance of the role of an industry association, whether it be WIMTA or any industry association, and how, so we're looking out here, and I'm assuming we don't have, boating manufacturers and people building this stuff, so they might not be part of your association, but how should they connect to whether it be WIMTA or any industry association?
Well, they are. They are part of our association, but thinking about a trade association, so WIMTA is a team of 3. We're very small. We're right upstairs. But we're kind of the voice of the industry, or we are the voice of the industry, with 250 members. The companies, although very diverse, need somebody to go to with questions, with issues. We're advocating for them all the time. When COVID hit, the amount of questions that came through the office of, what do I do? This employee did this, or how do I manage this? We were kind of that go-to organization to help answer those questions, whether it be through government, state government, federal government. We're also kind of the intermediary between training grants for when you think about workforce and education. Most of our companies don't have to go to the Department of Labor and Training to ask questions, because they can come to us. They can also get funding for hiring and training grants through us without having to go through the Department of Labor and Training. Now, we do that work for them. We know the language, we know how to speak to the state, we know how to do the paperwork, and so that helps them tremendously. And then on the education side, the employers are now saying, hey, we need young people, we're going to have to train them on the job, they're not always coming trained, so how do we connect with the schools? And so, instead of, Newport High School having 30 employers call them to say, hey, how can we connect? We help them do that, and that's throughout Rhode Island through the education system. And then also on the advocacy side, legislative side, we mentioned that we do have a lobbyist. One of the biggest issues that we've overcome and hopefully stays in place is the no sales tax on boats. That's huge for the industry. When you buy a boat and keep a boat here in Rhode Island, you don't have to pay sales tax. So that's a lot of money saved versus other states in the United States. So.
Can I add one thing? I forgot about blue economy. I didn't say it, and I'm giving a little slap on my hand, but coastal resiliency and adaptation technology is also a huge part of blue technology that we have to mention.
Absolutely. And Lindsay, just kind of back to you. So Polaris MEP, right, you kind of talked about the MEP and the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, but can you talk a little bit about the Rhode Island Marine Trades, the Rhode Island Manufacturing Association, RIMA, all these acronyms, right? The Manufacturing Association and the presence that plays in partnership with you.
So RIMA is the advocacy wing. Like Polaris MEP doesn't do its own lobbying, but RIMA does lobby, and RIMA is the industry, the counterpart from LIMTA in the manufacturing sector. So the industry association, the membership organization that represents manufacturers, is trying to bring good policies, maintain good policies, and bring funding into the state, or advocate for funding for the state on behalf of the manufacturing sector. The manufacturing sector is really diverse. Like in some places you hear their primary market is defense, or their primary is aerospace, or their primary is food. In Rhode Island, we don't have a dominant industry. We have a very diverse group. So we have people from defense, aerospace, submarine building. We have a lot of food manufacturers and jewelry and medical device manufacturers. So it isn't just one industry you're trying to serve. It's all these different types of manufacturers, and there's a ton of overlap with the marine trades as well. So Jen was talking about the skills, like transferable skills, and the skills we look at for our marine trades and manufacturing. There's a ton of overlap there, so it's a great way to partner. RIMA does a lot with partnering with us to roll out programs and connect Polaris MEP to other manufacturers in order to kind of meet their needs.
And with 401 TechBridge, we're not an industry association, and we're certainly not specific to just manufacturing or just boating or just healthcare or whatever it may be. We were actually formed to kind of be that all-encompassing, connector of bringing industry, academia, and government together, and really bringing in and partnering with the industry associations as well as other organizations, including the Composites Alliance of Rhode Island, as well as the Rhode Island Textile Innovation Network. So you kind of had textiles, you had composites, you've got marine trades, you've got manufacturing, you've got the Southeast New England Defense Industry Alliance, right? You've got CIMIDI here in Rhode Island. 401 TechBridge is kind of that outside entity working and partnering with many of those different industry associations, but also kind of sharing the work that they're doing with the population, right, that we're supporting in terms of startups and entrepreneurs as well as academia. So industry associations, if you have not kind of taken a look at their website, their programming, the work that they do, or even their events, they are more than willing to kind of meet with you and engage with you and talk about the sector that they represent and the economic and workforce needs and opportunities of that sector. Lindsay, with the MEP, can you talk about, I know you're here in Rhode Island, but there's a national network, and really how the MEP meets the needs of business and industry?
So in every state it's different, as I said before, but we talk to manufacturers on what their needs are to support their business and grow their business locally. So that in a lot of places, the priorities right now around the country are focused on supply chain and workforce development. So everyone heard heard about supply chain backups. People had, even Amazon orders were late, right? So, right now, those are the biggest issues that we're focused on by NIST. And so from the workforce side, a lot of it has to do with incumbent worker training, but also MEPs in different locations are focused on new hire pipelines. That's the major focus of workforce in Polaris MEP, is about building a workforce. And in order to build a workforce, you have to be in a really attractive industry, right? You have to have good career pathways, you have to have good benefits, you have to have good policies in place. So, looking at the way you're responding to the needs of an industry and also helping guide those local manufacturers with best practices. But one of the biggest benefits of being part of a national network is having the access to best practices from around the country. We've had the benefit of, at least from the workforce side, Miracle Works is a working group that has really connected all the MEP workforce teams in order to create a really vibrant way to share best practices. And so I think that's the biggest benefit of working as part of an MEP, that access and that support from the government as well.
Great. So, a little on the 401 Tech Bridge side, when I mentioned like commercialization and dual use, and we're not an industry association or have a national network, but however we do, right, there are extensions of our arms and our eyes and our ears on the ground to do the work that we do. When I say commercialization and dual use, when it talks about business opportunity, right, that's really getting to, right, whether it be businesses or individuals, if we can build our businesses here, if we can create an environment in the state that is attractive to business so that they move here, right, that raises us all, right? That provides more job opportunity, that provides training where we can upskill our individuals in our residents in our state to make money, right, to buy that car, to get to that better job. So commercialization of technology allows businesses to grow, right? Dual-use technology, where it could potentially have a military application or not, provides greater opportunity for our workforce and our businesses. So that's kind of when we hear commercialization or dual use, or even the MEP and the Industry Association, we have to work in conjunction and partner with each other, because if we don't, I could stand on the corner and talk to you all day long, but without these folks here, I'm a billboard, right, at that point. So they're the ones that are really doing, and our partnerships really drive that work. So kind of shifting a little bit to pathway programs. This is where I'm going to hand the microphone over to both Jen and Lindsay, because they really, I don't want to say have been doing this and have mastered it and certainly have more to go, but their work is actually unbelievable. So, and we need to make sure, and I need to make sure that you all not only hear about it, but that others hear about it as well. Because when I talk to people, they go, I had no idea that was going on. How do I, we have a new employee that started with 401 Tech Bridge 6 weeks ago, and when she interviewed, right, and she's here today, and I won't call her out, but when she interviewed, she, was interviewing for a position for an organization that she did her homework on. Stephanie, wave to everybody. And during the interview process, as we went through the couple of iterations, at some point she sat back in her chair and she was like, oh my God, I've got kids, how do I, so, and she had done her homework on us and still, right, didn't recognize the opportunity. So, with that being said, Lindsay and Jen, so if you could talk about kind of pathway programs, how do you partner with public-private and non-profit organizations, and then your work around serving the underserved populations. And Lindsay's biting at the bit here, sitting at the end of her chin, and so is Jen. So I'll let you fight over kind of tag teaming how you want to handle it.
This is where our bread is buttered, okay? I can't talk about anything else, but I can talk about this. So Polaris is the workforce intermediary for the manufacturing sector in partnership with the Department of Labor and Training Real Jobs Rhode Island program. So for the past 5 years, we've been creating demand-driven workforce programs that create access as well as answer the needs of our respective sectors. There's a ton of overlap. But it started with a partnership between Polaris MEP, CCRI doing a Fast Track to CNC program, which is an amazing program where we train folks at no cost to be CNC machinists, which is a huge in-demand career pathway. We've learned a lot, we're still learning, so there's a lot to go, but in each iteration of that program, it has gotten better. Not only are we training folks, we are reducing barriers, wraparound services, making sure that folks that are below grade level can get up a little bit higher to be doing the career pathway training. We are providing connections to industry in the forms of internships, tours, we call it job shadowing, the internship portion. So folks are actually getting exposed to different manufacturing environments. We have partnerships with manufacturers who want to hire out of the programs, but also want to invest in the training of the next generation of manufacturers. So not everyone is hiring out of every cohort, right? But they are working with us to help develop that generation of CNC machinists, quality personnel, right? This program is now in its 18th cohort, and it comes with industry-recognized credentials as well as college credit in case you want to continue to pursue your education. And it is stackable, so after you finish your 20 weeks of training, you would get an advanced manufacturing certificate, which is stackable to an associate's in engineering or manufacturing. And so this is one example of programs. It's not meeting the demand in the state, right? But it is kind of helping prepare really skilled folks for jobs that are, normally people say you need 2 to 5 years experience. So it's not replacing 2 to 5 years experience, but it's doing the best thing it can to get folks up to a really high level of competency in order to be ready for their jobs that are in demand right now and that are anticipated to be in demand in the future. We just did the ribbon cutting on JARC Rhode Island, the Jane Addams Resource Corporation, that we went out to tour in Chicago and in Baltimore a few years ago. We're like, we need this in Rhode Island. That program happens to be a career pathways program in manufacturing, which is convenient since we're an MEP and have to work in manufacturing, but it is a program to bring folks from poverty to stability to wealth generation through not only a really hands-on and awesome CNC training program, but also through intense wraparound services. Like if you're in that program, you are doing financial literacy, you are building credit, you are looking at ways to secure stable housing, you are applying, you're doing public benefit screening while you're in training until you're getting into those jobs that take you out of that poverty level. So really looking at what we need to do to broaden the workforce pipeline, the supply chain pipeline, the workforce pipeline, so that we can get folks trained for the jobs that are going to be in high demand. And so I want to let Jen talk about this program in particular because she's been instrumental in the success of it. But after the Fast Track to CNC program, there's still not enough skilled workforce. And let's look at the people who have the most barriers and are the most underserved. So we were looking at the women in the Department of Corrections facility. And so we got together with our community partners, which are a lot of nonprofits from around the state, so I don't want to name some and not others, with our training partners, and built and opened up a machine shop in the women's facility. And we're currently training folks inside and getting jobs before they transition out in most cases, so that they have savings, that they have support for housing, which is a huge barrier and not nearly enough being done, but getting them really high skills so people stop caring what they did. And that's kind of like what their record is. Even though they've served their time, people generally, if you can train folks high enough skilled, you can get them into great jobs and change their entire trajectory.
Well, you've explained the whole thing.
No, but there's more. I get excited.
So I do love my job, but being part of this is my favorite part of the job right now. With my degree in criminal justice, it just kind of brings me back to why I went to college and had college loans. But that's beside the point. But the program with these women it's so awesome. It's great to see them be in a career that they never thought that they would ever be in, or to have a career that they never thought that they would have. This is the second cohort to actually graduating on Friday. 7 women in each cohort, and we've been able to place a good majority of them. Some of them are going to companies that are saying, hey, Jen and Lindsay, this person did so well, who else do you have? And that's awesome to see. Getting employers to think about, okay, you have a need for somebody with a skill set that you can't find. Here's the skill set. This person's got super huge barriers, right? Unfortunately, look at the skill set and put the criminal background to the side. And employers are starting to look at that. It takes time, it takes convincing, it takes success stories, but it's really been cool to see. It's awesome to see these women succeed and hopefully not come back to Cranston. So it's been an awesome program, so happy to be a part of it. Thinking about pathways, LIMTA has been kind of organizing youth programming activities for a while now in the marine trades. We used to call them our greenhouse activities, kind of building up the youth into the industry. I mentioned before the awareness piece, talking to parents and adults and kids in school about the industry. We often are asked to go to career fairs in high school. I actually met Linda because she was working at Tiverton High School years ago as the school-based coordinator, so we would often coordinate on different activities, getting her students exposed to the industry. But being asked to go to a career fair for the Marine Trades Association is a waste of our time, to be completely honest. And I tell the schools this too, because we stand behind a desk or a table and watch the middle school kids all talk to each other, and it's not engaging, right? So the most effective way for us to engage these youth is to get them on a bus and bring them to a marina or boatyard, get them to Newport Shipyard, get them to New England Boat Works, so they can actually see what a boat looks like out of the water, in the water, the types of jobs that are involved in the marine trades. So there's kind of that piece. Then we also have high school programming at the career and tech level. There's a career and tech program in North Providence, believe it or not. It's very successful. There's one in Warwick, and then Warwick, sorry. 12 years. One in Warwick also. So these are all career and tech high schools focusing on marine trades in Rhode Island. And then from there, we also do summer boat building programs where students actually get paid to learn how to build boats in the summertime. These are 14 and 15-year-olds that are sometimes too young for their first job, but too old for camp. So it's 20 hours a week for 5 weeks in the summertime, and they earn about $150 a week towards in a stipend. And then beyond that, we do internships. We have a couple of high school credit recovery programs that we partner with the Herreshoff Museum in Bristol with. They do boat building. They're picked up from the school, brought to Herreshoff Museum in the afternoon, earn credit and wages and skills all at the same time. And then from there, we just kind of get into the adult population, underemployed, unemployed, run training programs based on what the need is for the industry, as Lindsay does also, and then also helping with the incumbent workers, building that pipeline up, training, upskilling the current workforce to build the pipeline moving up.
Anything else on youth? You want to talk about?
Yeah, so we have been trying to increase our outreach. The workforce team at Polaris is a pretty small team. So we try to partner with schools to increase engagement of like middle school and high schoolers. We did do a big manufacturing day event. We started it last year. We're going to do it again this year in October, where we get manufacturers and some trades or companies to come in, bring their young people, like not necessarily just their owner, but like people that are young and engaging and look like the folks that are coming to our career festivals, and cool stuff, right? So we're bringing, Tiffany came in with like some very cool setting, it was not the real stones, they didn't bring diamonds, but some really cool stone setting things. We have companies bringing in robotic arms, we have companies with drones, we have companies, so doing what we can to expose folks to what manufacturing career pathways can look like now, so that we can get interest to bring them into our other programs. There is also another partnership, so as the Real Jobs Intermediary, like I said, we work with different trainers and training programs to create more access and more training for the in-demand to the industry. We also work with We Make Rhode Island, which is the only industrial textile sewing program in the state. And they also have been doing youth work. So through our partnerships, we're doing a lot of exploration. We need more. We need to be getting folks really understanding what the jobs are going to be looking like in, whether it's in CNC, whether it's in robotics or robotic welding, whether it is in additive or other sorts of cyber machine technology. Like, these are all the things that we need to be doing more. So we're gearing up, and if you have any ideas, come talk to us.
So I will say just kind of a couple past kind of personal experiences from working with Jen. We did have a student, right, who Jen was standing behind a table with her flyers and looking very special that day. But it was the continuation of the partnership that Jen and the Marine Trades Association did with that program in that school. So there was a young man who probably walked by Jen's table and did not engage with her whatsoever. That young man, but however, was very interested in doing the hands-on boat building program. Went through the boat building program, received their weekly stipend, and had a pretty good time, and kind of had some interest in going to work for a boat company and doing some different things on the technician level, and he is now our harbor master. So we went from a young man who was probably dragged to the school door by whomever in the morning, and took them through, dragging them through the English and math and whatever, and kind of went down to that space to do that work with that teacher in that program. And it was that industry association and those businesses, the partnership and the program that Jen just alluded to, that has now taken that young man and his family off to do really great things. And they could list a ton of examples like that. So that's one young person that I worked with. Lindsay and her work in the Department of Corrections, and Jen as well. She mentioned the JOC Space, which is that workforce training CNC program, 50 Sims Avenue in Providence, in case you want to drive by. Uniform Tech Bridge happens to have just opened a lab, a prototyping lab, connected to and within the JOC Space. It's a separate lab, but right outside the wall is this workforce training program. The space is meant for companies to come and kind of prototype and test and use equipment and things like that. But the biggest interest that we've heard so far from the companies we're engaging with is, hey, wait a minute, there's a workforce program right outside the door here, and they're doing CNC machining, and they're going to be doing other stuff, and there's robotic stuff, and there's all in this blue space, and who are you connected with? And that's the biggest driver for those companies to come in. So we actually hired some of the women out of the program for that Lindsay and Jen just mentioned, to set up our lab. They want to work, right? They want to learn skills. They had incredible attitudes, and I couldn't have asked for a better group, right, to kind of help us do that effort and stand up both labs, our lab here in Middletown as well as Providence. But when the door opened and they saw the machining and they heard about a workforce program, their first question was, how do I get on that program? How do I get on the list? When does it open up? And it's like, we don't even have an occupancy permit, but hang on. It's like, well, go talk to Lindsay. It's like, but, they're in the program and they want these opportunities, but so do others, right? So with all of this, I would say, how do you advertise? How do you get to these communities? How do you get to the folks with transportation barriers, language barriers, even adults? I know we've talked a lot about students here, right? Sometimes if you can drag the student, you can drag the parents or the guardian. But how do you get to these populations within the state?
So our model is really focused on community partnerships and creating culturally competent communications plans. So, I saw a flyer the other day that had just been, training was available and one word was changed. And they changed one word when they were changing it from one community to another. Nothing else changed on the fly, right? So we're talking about really thinking about how to build trust in communities so that folks want to engage with us. And that takes time and something we've been working on for a long time. So that means showing up at community events. That means showing up at food drives. That means showing up at a workforce or like an American Job Center. It means partnering and going to events all around the state with all the folks that want access or need access to good career pathways and who will eventually make the manufacturing sector and blue tech so much stronger. It is not something you can do quickly if you're not doing it well, or even if you are doing it well. It takes time. So we partner really intentionally with schools, with community organizations, and work to market programs. So if we have training, even if it's only available in English, right, it needs to be culturally competent and available in other languages so that folks can sit around the table at night talking about the program in whatever, looking at the flyer, sharing it with their grandparents, right? So we are doing, it seems like small things to really engage the community more and talk about the resources that are available in the state. Building our programs for those with the most barriers allow most people, not everyone, but most people to access them. And we try to have opportunities around the state for folks in all the geographic areas. A lot of our stuff is in Providence by design because of the way our transportation is set up. So if we can access stuff in other areas, we do, but we also know that it's easier to get to Providence than it is to other parts of the state for most places. So we try to make sure there's a good concentration of training and availability and connecting. But then we work on really intentional relationships with our employers to make sure that we're looking for opportunities that match what our trainees need in their geographic region, right? If they have transportation issues, it needs to be near a bus stop, right? Their shifts need to be flexible enough so that if they're working on first shift, they can get there in the morning. If they're working on second shift, they can get home at night. And our employers are starting to really work with us to try to change the way they are doing things, to have more accessible positions, to take advantage of the skilled workforce that we're training that needs a little bit of flexibility, right? To bring folks back into the workforce that had to go home and take care of their kids during COVID, right? So we are looking at all the ways and partnering with companies that really want to do better, become that, increase their job quality, and be more accessible and take advantage of those skills.
So I think our industry could do a little bit better of a job with reaching out to different populations. With RIMTA, as I mentioned, we're a team of 3, and me being the one workforce development person. Our executive director helps a little bit, but that's not his job, right? So, reaching out to other nonprofits and other organizations that serve these populations is kind of the best way that we do this right now. Set aside from the Department of Corrections program, but with the marine trades industry, we don't care if you're female, if you're male, whatever gender you are, piercings, tattoos, hair color, skin color, it doesn't matter. Employers don't matter. Typically, most people think of, it's a white man industry, and it kind of was, right? But those people are old, right? And so they're leaving and retiring. And so the younger generation is taking over, and they don't really care. And so I think that's why it's become a little bit more easy to place the women from the Department of Corrections into these positions, and then, bringing in people that might have a lower skill level and training them in the job. But it's hard to promote the industry, especially in communities that, even more so than, the water-based communities, Providence, Pawtucket, Cranston, that just really have no idea or even think about boats or being on the water. Can certainly do a better job, but partnering with other organizations that do it better than we do to help recruit is kind of our way of going about it.
So if you can imagine, I've mentioned defense a few times, so when you show up with an any space and say the defense industry, right? Try to break that, white and bright, right? So everyone's got a PhD, everyone is white, everyone is, at a different level. Defense, you gotta join the military, right? So that's the first thing that people, think, and whether it be adults or the young. How do we break that, that perception? And it's through awareness and exposure, and it's through programming, and it's through partnering and showing up with folks like Lindsay and Jen and the programs that they do, and the workforce programs, and the youth programs, and adult programs, and even the graduations. These folks have done great jobs, including even taking some of those folks coming out of their programs with some, little bit of barriers there, right, on their resume, and working with Electric Boat as an example for placement. And, some of these bumps in the road have been bumps in the road, and maybe a little bit minor to the, nope, you got X next, right? And that's the database that works that, and it's the voice of folks like that are sitting at the table here that work with those business and industry partners to say, hang on a minute, like, I get it, but here's how can we, or what is, or what can I provide you for? And many of these folks don't advocate for themselves. They don't feel comfortable. They probably don't even apply, or would never have thought of applying, because it's just a strict no. So the advocacy, the work, the training programs, the partnerships that these folks do right here are breaking down those silos, breaking down those barriers, and we have a long way to go. But through partnerships in speaker series like this, and in just the community, hopefully we're gonna move the needle. So I know that we said we're not just going to death by PowerPoint, and we wanted this to be interactive, and I've yet to ask you of anything to, we've got just a couple wrap-up questions, but certainly want to turn it over to you all to ask, any questions that you may have, or share any comments or ideas. Don't all speak at once. This is when I start calling on you. Yes, Lee?
Okay.
Does she need a microphone, Kevin?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll repeat your question.
In speaking to a lot of the CEOs in these different companies, they're saying that our children, say like from K through 12 and up to 16, they really need those hard and soft skills and the social emotional. They said, we can teach the others, but boy, they need those skills. And it has to start at the elementary, out even before that, and really work on that. Do you find that when you're working with people who are trying to make that transition from where they are into the workforce and stay in the workforce? Is this something that is...
So the question is around business and industry looking for those hard skills, but more importantly, those soft skills, and does your programming address both of those?
You want to go first?
I definitely hear you with the lower age group, but that's kind of at any age group we're hearing. Our employers want work-ready individuals. And so at RIMTA, we've run several training programs. We find that the best way to fill industry positions is to get money from the Department of Labor and Training, and then kind of pass that off to employers to help train them, and pay for some of the wages to help offset the risk and training. But we do put them through, the potential new employees, kind of put them through some hoops, through different interviews, doing research to see that they are job ready. I think this, to talk about the younger kids, I think the schools have done a better job, and they're realizing that this needs to happen at the lower age group level and in high school. I'm pretty sure when you were at the high school, you were doing some work readiness stuff, resume writing, interview skills, things like that, which are kind of on the higher end. But I think schools are stepping it up more than they have in the past, realizing that this is a huge need for all industries in Rhode Island.
Most of our programs try to have enough wraparound services to address whole people and their needs, whole families, and take an intergenerational approach to workforce and poverty alleviation as well. So we are trying to do it in our trainings, For example, if you're going and doing CNC training at JARC, like I said, you're doing financial literacy, you're also going to have case management and wraparound services to refer. So we don't have in-staff psychiatrists or psychologists, but we do partner with organizations that are focused on the lived experience and that have people that have lived experience that we partner with to address. So we make referrals really intentionally to organizations that can do things better than we can, because we're not going to try to duplicate every service that's available in Rhode Island, but there are great organizations that are doing really impressive work, and so we need to utilize those resources and connect folks that need them to those resources. If we can get them while they're still in elementary and middle school, especially now, like talk about I have 3 kids, and we have an incredible amount of privilege. Like, I am extremely lucky, and I'm constantly telling my kids how lucky they are. But even my kids, like after COVID, like the level of anxiety they experience is so much higher. So you're talking about, what are folks of lower income and middle income families facing right now, and what are the lasting effects? There's plenty of data that talks about the education gaps and learning disparities between lower income folks and their peers, and how that's been exacerbated. Those disparities have just grown. So we need to be looking at providing more after school and more summer programs that are also taking consideration for social emotional well-being. And then connect people to these skills, that connect people to boat building programs, that connect people to STEM and robotics and machining, and some really cool, engaging stuff that can bring you on to a defense pathway, a blue tech pathway, an engineering pathway from a young age, so we can get people starting to think about the opportunities that are available to them and get their families to understand what opportunities are available to them. But definitely huge need for those soft skills and that social emotional support just across the board. I think we could all use it.
And I would say, Lee, kind of to your question, and back to the CEOs, mentorship, right? And industry showing up, and I know you got your day jobs, and, there's a bottom line and all of those kinds of things, but the power of mentorship is incredible, and I don't think any of us can put a price tag on that, nor can a DLT or an EDA or Commerce grant, right, support the management or program, activity itself. It's those people and sharing their experiences and providing that feedback and that example of, and also engaging with them as to, their operation and what they expect and what they're looking for. And, and a lot of times it's not about the technical piece, right? If you've got the right work ethic and you can work in a team and you're communicative and you're creative and you're, and all of those kinds of things, the technology or the tech kind of hard piece comes second, right? Because we can teach anybody that. It's that whole package that they need. Any other questions?
Gotta be something.
Come on.
Good morning first. This is very interesting. So you mentioned mentorship. Is there anything else in addition to mentorship that just the average everyday person can help volunteer or do?
So the question was, right, I'm going to keep you good here, Kevin. The question was, is there mentorship or opportunities where the common everyday person can kind of show up and get engaged? And my answer first to you is going to be careful what you wish for, and don't give your cell number to any, especially the two to my left here, but I'll let you kind of take either one of those. Go ahead.
Okay, so yes, there are lots of things it can do. I said we partner very intentionally with different community leaders. There's some amazing youth-serving organizations and adult-serving organizations in the state. I am part of the leadership, well, actually, we're both part of the leadership Rhode Island Sigma 2 best class ever. And, we learned a lot about different community serving organizations that are providing such as basic needs, education, organizations like Foster Forward. And so these are organizations that we get referrals for our training program. So our Fast Track to CNC program, the JARC program, We Make Rhode Island, like there are tons of community serving organizations that are referring folks for training and career pathways to our training programs. And I would say there's opportunities for industry-specific volunteer work and for, helping out if you have a skill like for financial literacy or anything with media or branding or marketing, or there's career festivals to be volunteered at. But if you are looking for like an ongoing, consistent something, I would refer you to one of our referring agencies that are doing just incredibly community-based work. There's also mentorship available, like we partner with Youth Build, so our team will go in and do mock interviews as representatives of a certain industry. And so there's opportunities around the community for ongoing, not regular, some regular, but ongoing, occasional partnership as well. And I think I would highly encourage you to get involved in any way, and I'm happy to talk to you about your specific skill set and get your cell phone number.
Bingo. So I think depending on, what your individual background interests are in, we could always use help with our summer programs. One of the requirements is work readiness training, right? So it's 100 hours throughout the week, and then 20 hours of that is supposed to be work readiness. So resume writing, interview skills, any help with interviewing, somebody from the outside coming in to help with interview skills, that soft skills piece. It's tough to try to get 20 hours out of a 100-hour program to sit down specifically for this. They certainly try to incorporate it contextualized into the boat building and skill building on that side. But I think your point of connecting with other organizations like Foster Forward, other nonprofits, to help connect us with those organizations is huge. And then helping the marine trades promote the industry, that there are jobs here in Rhode Island.
Questions?
Hi, you guys. Sarah from Social Enterprise Greenhouse. So some of the work that we do here in Newport is with the Working Cities Workforce Development Group. And I guess my question to you all is, again, about the connection between youth and adults in a community to the programs that you're talking about. And I know, you've done so much to connect through the schools and through referring institutions. And I'm just thinking about how the sort of trust factor you guys were talking about, and the sort of the cultural barriers that there are. And I just wanted to hear what you guys have to say about that. I think we struggle in Newport to kind of bridge that gap with the residents here in our community and connecting with programs.
So the question is really connecting with communities when there's in establishing those trust factors as well as the cultural topics. We definitely have to do more. I saw a presentation the other day at a RIMA event about the demographics of the CTE programs in the state. And manufacturing is by far the best, and I think it was like 80% white. Okay, that's the best. Or maybe it might have been 76. But so we're not doing enough, but we are trying to do more. And it really comes to getting young folks to see themselves in these career pathways and to have conversations and to have enough involvement and enough presence in the community that it becomes natural to be curious about a certain career pathway, that there are skills that you are learning from a young age that are generating interest, that are then connected to clear career pathways, that you can talk about what is available. When people are talking about in school about what do you want to be when you're older, okay, I want to be a veterinarian. I wanted to be at one point a princess and at one point a firefighter, right? Like, let's talk about and expose folks to those career pathways by showing them from an early age the cool robotics. I have a lot to learn from Linda about youth engagement she's done with like STEM and FIRST Robotics.
First robotics, right? Yeah. And, you know, getting exposure to those career pathways. And now that we have we're filling a certain level of engagement and training pathways, but we need more to come in and fill that gap to get folks, we can provide training, and we can do it in a way that's really strong and really creating access, but we also need to do more to get those young folks interested in exploring those career pathways and signing up for those training. And so we do that through community organizations, but there's more to be done.
Yeah, and I think if there's ways that you can suggest to help you, to help us, vice versa, please let us know. You know, we try to be in the Newport community as much as possible, working with FAD Newport and schools and things like that. I was part of the original Working Cities group before, when it first got funded 6 years ago, maybe. So I'm pretty familiar with that group. It's a great group. But you know, if there's ways that we can help more or in a better way, please let us know.
I'm so happy I'm sitting here so I get to answer first.
These connections matter. So 2 things on that. I took and organized, I want to say it was 260 middle schoolers. Yeah, I wasn't thinking. 260 middle schoolers to Raytheon for the day. So just a little bit of a lift. And we were in Thompson, here in Newport, middle school, and I was doing my spiel. I was so proud of myself. I had the undersea robot. I made it look like an animated fish, and I was going to get these, you know, these little bright minds. And there was this young lady sitting in the front row, and she was like this. And no matter what I did, I could have danced and did balloon animals, and it did not matter. And I talked to her at the end. And then as we were questions, you know, careful what you wish for from middle schools, right? But, you know, and I kind of looked at her and I said, aren't you excited? And her answer was no. Oh, okay. Why not? Don't you, not able, you're going to be out there down the road, and robots are bad. I was like, okay, how do I handle this, right? Robots are bad. I'm like, no, robots, you know, it's technology, I'm doing my thing. And come to find out, what she shared briefly was her mom lost her job at, I want to say it was a retail store because of self-checkout. And because of automation, that wasn't a robot, but I was talking about things that, you know, take the human factor out, right? Because you're running a machine or developing a robot, and the robot is going in to do, whether it be to clean a submarine or to, you know, a weld or whatever it may be. And that was her perception at sixth grade. I would say it was 6th grade. So when we talk about engagement, language, culture, trust, all of those kinds of things. But yeah, I as the industry person was like, what an incredible experience. This is going to be fantastic. And that was one little girl, a student at this school, and that was her perception, but that was her environment, that was her parents, mom lost jobs, and, you know, and what that meant. And how do you make that shift for not only that child, but for that adult, for that neighborhood, for that community, to go into their church or whatever it may be. So that's where it becomes, right, we've got a lot more work to do, but how do we, you know, make sure that we're doing this together and not siloed? You had a question?
First, I'm going to have to text my Brits and stop battle royale like it's the...
Sigma 2, greatest class ever. You want to take a picture of this?
Battle royale between the classes.
No.
Secondly, about the volunteerism and the mentorism, I was actually working in workforce development before we lost our grant at the end of April. But before that, I had actually gotten in touch with Kate Brewster. I live on the other side of the bay at Johnny Cake Center. And I volunteered with her, and just about 3 weeks ago, I sat down with a couple of South Kingstown High School seniors who aren't going on to college, but they wanted to get resumes together. And they're now both working at Southern Hospital. So that's the kind of thing you can do. Just, you know, if you've got a nonprofit in your area or something you want to do, like they said, give them your phone number and get involved. That's the kind of thing you can But if you're good at it, volunteer to do it.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's that stepping up, right? It's that someone raising their hand. And we're looking for folks all the time to do those mock interviews, not only, there are middle schoolers, 7th and 8th grade, programs that are doing it. They're doing it in high school. They're doing it. We have 127 CTE programs, I think at last count, maybe 132, across the state of Rhode Island, right? That's only a small segment of the population though, right? What about, your Boys and Girls Clubs and your WISE and your after-school programming and just within your community itself. So there's different ways, but please reach out and raise your hand. And, mentorship comes in many different forms. Doesn't mean showing, someone how to code, right? And learn a technical skill. That mentorship piece sometimes is even just a voice and a few sentences that resonate with an adult or with a child. Any other questions?
Well, just a quick question. The 401, I love the area code, and I'm not from here. But, 401Ks, that was one of the things that helped me go to the job I went to, Shoreline Sightseeing in Chicago. So 10 years, I put that under my belt, and it was not a year-round job for most of the people. But like I saw the development, people deckhand duties, and then 3 years later, they're seniors, and then they're captains, and so I saw the people. But and we would get bonuses that you could buy cars with. But again, it's private industry that they didn't take any federal money for any of this. So it was like they took the risk, trained the people. Sometimes you had the drug thing that, you have a piss test that you fail, and then they would be screwed for a bit. And I think it's an important thing. The drug thing is kind of, people are getting failed piss tests, and then they have to, the Coast Guard, it's like you can lose your ability to earn money for 6 to 8 weeks at a time. And you talk about we had DARE programs as kids. And when I went to college, if you got a drug thing, you would lose your federal money. But that didn't incentivize, that just screwed people. So, I'm thinking 401, what are some of the things that I know people lost out? Money, that not necessarily for training, but they signed up for a stupid credit thing for, and then, it does come down to the people that you're with, that you work with, but what I'm saying is, what for the 401, is there incentivizing or not unionizing, but kind of thing, positive draws to this, to say what you're saying, to get people to trust this group or that group, it's doing the training, and you clearly are, but how do you also be like, hey, they need a credit line because they screwed up?
So I'll use the example of our corrections program, right? Because they're going to have to deal with the implications of their, their decision-making or their situations that put them into where they are now. And so when we talk about barrier reduction, we try to look at the whole people. So what do you need to do to be out and sufficient or taking care of a family or supporting yourself and others? And what do you look for from credit, from banking? What do you need from substance abuse disorders and counseling? So we are connecting with different organizations. We connect with banks. I'm not promoting a certain bank, but we happen to have Bank Newport coming in to do financial health and opening accounts for our trainees, so that before they get out, right, they get a stipend during training. That money goes into an account for when they get out, so they have money in an account that has nobody else attached to it, which is important before they get out. They are getting lessons on credit building, on scams, what's it like? Fraud, right before they're out. So we aren't by no means perfect, but we're trying to look at all the things that or many of the barriers that they're going to face at all levels, and provide connections and resources, and that comes from building trust. Like the women in our programs, see us. They see Jen all the time, and like they will call her or text her, and so it really takes a lot of investment in manpower, in people to make sure that folks are going to be there, to spend the face time, to connect with the organizations, because I can say, yeah, sure, there's tons of resources available to you, right, to you, right? You're coming into our training, there's tons of resources, okay. I don't know any of these people, there needs to be a connection between the services that are available, the training programs, the community levels, the actual individuals, and all these other services and training. There has to be human connection between them. So, that takes people. And so back to the mentorship issue, there's always more need for connecting people with other people.
Great. So I think we are at time. Is that correct? Hang on.
I just have one more plug for the industry. Our companies, Boatyards and Marinas, were telling us that they have a huge need for mechanics and outboard technicians. So we recently received funding from Real Jobs Rhode Island and partnered with New England Institute of Technology to run a pilot program. It's 10 weeks long, and it starts July 7th and goes through September 10th, Monday through Thursday, 5 to 9, and it's an intro to outboard training program. So this is meant for unemployed and underemployed individuals who have zero experience in boating. The first week and a half is what is a boat? What is a bow? What is this, right, the very entry-level stuff, and then they get into working on engines. Again, geared towards unemployed, underemployed individuals, so if you have a young kid that is sleeping on the couch in the basement, get this person up and apply to the training program. If you are a regular at Dunkin' Donuts and you've seen this same person every single day with great customer service skills, tell them about this training program. It's meant for all age groups, 18 and older. I actually just had, he's probably 55 or so, interviewed him at the office. He didn't have any real huge computer skills, so we didn't use Zoom. But I said to him, can you send me your resume? He said, I've never had a resume. He's been a stunt man his whole life.
That's awesome.
I've never met a stunt man, right? The list of movies from Free Guy to one of the Star Wars movies, like a list this long, and at the top is his shoe size, his helmet size. Like, this was so crazy to me, but he's a perfect fit for this training program because he has zero experience but wants to work with his hands, needs a new career and a new pathway. So I'll leave some of my cards, but just go to RIMTA.org, RIMTA.org, go to the Education and Training tab, and then you'll see the flyer for our program and the application. What's that?
Where's that going to be held?
At New England Tech, at the Warwick site. Yep, not their brand new site, it's the older one that you see off the highway. Yep, and that's free, 10 weeks with job placement at the end.
You didn't tell me about this program yet.
You want to?
Now that we know about it, no. The other, event, if you're looking for something to do towards the end of summer, it's called Powering the Future, right? So you've now how to write Powering the Future. The United Way of Rhode Island is putting it on. It's on Saturday, August 24th. 19th, Saturday, August 19th, at the Rhode Island Convention Center, really focused on workforce training for both youth and adult, right? So there's not only wanting the young youth to come in with their parents or their guardians or whomever it may be, but certainly geared towards adult as well. That's free. So it's August 19th, and it's called Power the Future by United Way of Rhode Island, and I'm sure you'll hear or see more about that shortly. We've just kind of been briefed to participate, but that might be another way to engage not only with us up here, but also with the many other organizations and community-based organizations and workforce development programs and schools and whomever else that's coming in. So if you're interested in that.
Good. Thank you.
I think we're good. So we're on time, and we filled what we thought we did, and we certainly appreciate you all being here, and we thank you very much for coming.